Good evening. I want to welcome all of you to our Candid Conversations panel discussion. It's great to be back in person, and I want to thank all of you for coming to our program. If anyone asks you about the program, we will be filming tonight and posting it on the library's YouTube channel sometime later. So just let them know that they can still see it online. This program is part of our Candid Conversations programming, which we began back in 2017. And this is, I think, the fourth panel discussion in that series. These are programs that look at issues of race and ethnicity, and particularly as they relate to law enforcement and criminal justice. So tonight's facilitator is Dr. Michael Birzer. He's a professor in the Criminal Justice Department at Wichita State University. He's been with us since the beginning, and he will introduce our panelists and be facilitating tonight's discussion. I would like to let our panelists know that to turn on your microphone, you just push the button lightly until it turns green. You will need to be speaking directly into the microphone in order for it to be picked up on film. So we look forward to a great discussion tonight, and please welcome Dr. Michael Birzer.
Thank you, Julie. I think that you are going to leave here tonight knowing something that you probably didn't know when you walked in the doors. Typically, when we do criminal justice reform panels, you see elected officials, police officials, correctional officials up here talking about criminal justice reform, prosecutors and defense attorneys. Rarely do you see men and women that have been impacted by the system, that have had bumps along the road and end up in the criminal justice system. Sometimes the first bump they've ever had, but that first bump lasts forever, for many years, even after they leave the system. There are still many obstacles. So I think you're going to enjoy this discussion. Kind of the format is I want to just kind of set the context. I want to read just a 2-minute kind of prepared statement as far as criminal justice reform and where we are at with criminal justice reform, what are the big issues. And then I thought, why not let our panelists briefly introduce themselves to you, and then from there we'll get into the questions on where do we go, what needs to be reformed, okay? So, increasingly, as we all know, over the last 50 years, United States policymakers and elected officials have enacted tough on crime approaches in an attempt to keep communities safe. Crime bills of the recent past have established over punitive sentencing guidelines, which have significantly increased incarceration rates and resulted in massive prison overcrowding. The fact is, tough on crime approaches have caused significant problems for those persons who have found themselves with a few bumps along the road and ended up in the criminal justice system. Unfortunately for many, those problems continue years after they leave the criminal justice system. It's also important to mention the rate of exonerations in the United States continue to rise. The National Registry for Exonerations reported there have been 3,000 exonerations just since 1989. Think about that, 3,000 exonerations since 1989. And if you look at some of the projected models that have been done, there are many more individuals sitting in our jails and prisons that have not committed a crime and are innocent. Also important is that behind every one of those 3,000 exoneration hides a massive human trauma and suffering that went along with that. Even when uncovered, wrongful convictions can take years and in some cases even decades to correct. Overly punitive law and order approaches, especially the war on drugs, has been particularly devastating for racial and ethnic minority citizens. Many law enforcement leaders and some elected officials now admit the devastating effects of the war on drugs. Consider a recent Pew Center report that found that African Americans represent 12% of the United States population, but 33% of our prison population. Caucasians accounted for 64% of the population, but only 30% of those in prison. and Hispanics held 16% of the nation's population, but over 23% of prison inmates. There are many reasons why criminal justice reform has gained momentum in recent years. Reform broadly aims to fix a number of areas, including harsh prison sentences, changing the drug sentencing policy that's centered out of the war on drugs, decriminalizing certain laws, prioritizing rehabilitation for offenders, altering policy surrounding food assistance program and voting rights for previous offenders. See, that's one way that the criminal justice system, even though you're out, continues to haunt you for the rest of your life if you can't go to the ballot and vote, if you've had a felony conviction. So that's problematic. And lastly, changing minimum mandatory sentencing laws, which have been passed, and many of those were extremely punitive in nature, coming out of several crime bills in the recent past. So this evening, we're going to dive into it, and we're going to have a wonderful panel here that's agreed to be here. And what I'm going to do is just start on this side and just have you go down and briefly introduce yourselves.
My name is Darwin Gordon.
My name is Stephanie.
My name is David Gilkey.
My name is John.
My name is Ricky Martz.
And hi, my name is Deborah Linden.
Okay, so wonderful panel. Just to kind of dovetail off the introduction, if you mind, just briefly mention your involvement in the system, what that entailed. You don't have to if you don't want to, or you can pass on that. We'll just start if you want to. Okay, sure. Okay, you're going to skip somebody.
No, I'm gonna go with him.
Okay.
I have a federal misdemeanor of theft of unemployment benefits.
Well, I'm no longer in the system, but I used to be in the system a while back. So right now, I'm doing quite well, pretty much saying.
I'm incorrect currently for aggravated battery.
I started out a year and a half ago on Reno County Corrections. I'm on 905 Corrections. I'm on drug court, the city of Wichita, Harvey County, and Sumner County. My charges are theft, forgery, written instrument, and some, I don't know what the other ones are. All for writing bad checks on my own account.
I have a felony possession, a drug possession charge, and I was ordered onto corrections at 905 and was unable to complete that program, and so was referred to the drug court program. And as of October last year, after 3 years, I finally graduated, was able to graduate that program.
Sorry, I had to collect my thoughts. I get nervous, but my name is Darwin Gordon. I just currently completed corrections. I'm done with the system, hoping to stay out of it for the rest of my life.
Yeah, you're doing great. I'm just getting nervous about informal conversation, so thank you for that. I think the way we approach this is we just jump into it and see where it goes. So I'm just going to throw out the question, what needs to be reformed in the criminal justice system? And you can highlight that by your own experience, or you can highlight that based on what you know of others' experiences in the system. You can talk about the humanity of the system, if you were treated, your human dignity, was it violated, even in the process, the court system, when you were arrested, etc. So let's take it where we think it needs to go with criminal justice reform, and I'll open it up with that. Maybe we can get some conversation going.
Okay, well, from the federal side, misdemeanors, you're unable to apply. You can apply for a pardon, but they usually don't accept a misdemeanor because the charges are felony, and that's what they look at. They look at a felony charge as affecting your civic
civil liberties over misdemeanors. Having said that, since my charge is federal, it can never be expunged, which, and so if it can never be expunged, then at least let us apply for a pardon.
And can you speak, I know we've talked a little bit about your situation, but again, a low-level felony, federal felony, cannot get it expunged, and you've tried some other working in the system to try to get things done, and it's just been nowhere.
No. Yes, because of that, I've applied so many places. And this is where I was telling Dr. Birzer that the ban in the box doesn't work because I have applied so many places and I answer that question and they'll just say they found someone else. Well, I finally met a recruiter and she had suggested that I do have qualifications to fill this position, but that's as far as she went with it. So in order for the ban in the box to actually work, we need to get more grassroots going, get the legislature to really get involved, and all the legislators to get involved in ban the box because it's just not working. It doesn't work.
And I just say that, having gainful employment once you get out is so important. We know when we look at large data sets on offending populations, that is definitely up there, the lack of employment. And so we have to do a better job of getting that taken off their application, banning that, and so persons can get jobs, make a living, and begin to get their lives back. And that's difficult to do if you can't get employment.
Well, when you talk about prison reform, my question is prison reform really working, or are people reforming their pockets with finances? Are the prisoners coming out getting rehabilitated? Are they getting reformed in the community, back into the community? I know for me, when I came out of prison, it was hard to get a job, and I was on that committee of ban the box. And I know for me, I had to just, when I go apply for a job, I would put on that line, I will explain up on interview, because we never make it to an interview. And that's one of the frustrations that I think is wrong, because if I did everything the court sentenced me to do, and I did everything coming out of court, completed my parole, probation, what have you, and you still treated me like a second-class citizen, I don't think that's right. Another thing, I don't think it's right for parole officers and probation officers to come up on your job. Because if you want to know how I'm doing at the job, all you got to do is call my supervisor. I don't think it's right because, see, when you show up, then I'm getting judged by my employees, then I'm getting treated differently. And also, I feel that depending upon your felony, after 5 years, if you stay out of trouble, you should have automatic expungement, depending upon your felony. I know all felonies can't be expunged, but there's people that have like misdemeanors, different things like that, that we sitting on probation, we have all these felonies that we can't get expunged for 20, 30 years of our lives. Then we go apply for a job and no one wants to hire us. Then you sit back, and I went through corrections also. I don't think it's right for us to walk around with that piece of paper saying where I went to look for a job. Because as soon as you hand it to an employer, they're going to judge you right off the bat. You'll never get a job. I think everyone, I got a second chance. So I think all these guys sitting up here and everybody else should get entitled to a second chance. Because, we are human beings too. We belong, we got families, we got loved ones, we got people that care about us just like anybody else. So I think when you talk about prison reform, are they reforming their pockets? Or are they really looking out for the people that's coming out of the system to try to get back into society and be good, right citizens?
Yeah, I agree. I think that once you make a mistake and catch a case and get a charge, that they shouldn't follow you the rest of your life like sometimes it does. Like it's so hard to get anything off of your record period, and it keeps you from getting the apartment you want, the house you want, the job you want, and it's making people do some crazy things for money out here. So, but the program that I'm in with Judy was it's a great program and an opportunity for us to show that a lot of us that has made a mistake are smart enough not to commit it again and really want to change, but we have to have the opportunity. You know, if you don't have the opportunity, the bills are there. You know, you got kids, you got to feed them, you got so many obstacles in life, and some people get distracted and get stuck in the way of life that they think that it's supposed to be coming, you know, from social media and everything. Nowadays, you know, everybody want to get a bag or be the biggest because that's all they know. You know, they don't have any escape routes, you know, and with the program they got giving us opportunities, man, I'm looking at life so totally different. I finally completed corrections in my life, you know, and I'm moving forward. I'm going to WSU Tech. I finished my technical part of working on my associate's degree, you know, and I'm looking at different avenues in life. Like right now, I'm building a smoker that I'm hoping to make into something that's going to benefit me and my family, you know. But that's different opportunities that some of these young men can have and don't know, and are coming out here thinking that the streets is what it is. And it's sad because, you know, the police is kind of looking at us one different way, but, you know, at the same time having their back on that, we're not giving them anything else to look at. You know, we're going out looking like thugs and acting like thugs, and that's how we want to get treated, you know. So if we start with the young, with the youth, and then show them a different way, I think everything will change. Because the system is just like they were saying, man, it's built once you catch a case, man, that's where you're judged to be, and it makes whole life so hard. And once they done made that mistake, and that's all they know, been around, they want to continue, and the life is over with, either in prison or, you know, and that's all.
A little bit about me is, I was going through a divorce. This was 5 years ago. Single mom, 4 kids, was working. I mean, we had good jobs. Went through the divorce, and I had no choice but to go write checks, you know, for rent, for a new house, because I got evicted. For food, Struth's Locker, I wrote checks there to provide for my kids. And I got 32 felonies. Now, by looking at my charges, you see theft charges, you see forgery charges, you see theft by deception. By looking at those charges, you would never know that I wrote bad checks on my own account. I got 3 felonies on each check, to where I have 32 felonies. Me still being a single mom, I had to do that to survive. I started, I was on 6 different probations. I'm on every probation you could have imagined. And it's been a struggle. Trying to find a house with 32 felonies and then your credit's screwed already. I just had to move recently. I had to get my house in my dad's name to even to be looked at. I think that there needs to be more programs like the Next Step program because, like you said, I'm not a bad person. I made that choices to survive for me and my kids. I had no other options. But I think that there needs to be more, maybe, like the question, not checking that box, because as soon as you check that box, you're nothing. I think that there is, with 905 corrections, they really don't care. There's not a lot of programs out there. They don't advocate for you. Drug court, it's where it's at. I mean, they're a really good support system. I've walked corrections out a couple years ago for a whole year, no problems. This time I couldn't even last 90 days. They look at you and, you know, I got in trouble, I got sent back to jail for being vicious in a police report. I mean, and I wasn't even being vicious. I was just sticking up for my son because he got pulled over. It's just stuff like that. They don't care. They see anything that you get in trouble for, you get rolled back to jail. You know, I'm doing good on drug court right now. Great support system. They're all about, you know, teaching you how to be a better person, what mistakes you made. The next step unlocked, they give you, you know, they put you to school, you know. That's something I lost when I was pregnant at 15, and I never got to do, so it gives you more hope. And so does drug court. Corrections, not so much. They lack empathy, they just don't care. You're just a felon to them, you're just another statistic. But if you look, and that goes by your charges. I mean, you would never know that I was a single mom just trying to make it, that's it. But I think there needs to be programs like when you're in prison or when you're in jail, because you're just sitting there day in and day out with nothing to do, just thinking about what you can do better next time to get away with it. There needs to be more positive things that people can look for. If you don't have that, you're just gonna go back to the streets, to everything that you know. We're back to writing checks. If I didn't have my family to help me, to get me into a good house, to get the, you know, just to help me, to get a car in my name, everything I own is in my dad's name because I'm not able to. So, I mean, I'm in school now trying to better myself, but I still got 32 felonies on my record, and it's gonna be hard. And then to get those expunged, you're looking at thousands and thousands of dollars, thousands. And it sucks, you know, you make one wrong decision or on a couple, 10 checks, and you get screwed. I mean, I did the crime, but it's a little harsh. My underlying sentence, if I was to mess up on papers right now, I'm looking at 9.5 years. And that's a lot, that's 110 months. I mean, I shouldn't have did it, but the punishment it's crazy. If there was more programs out there to help single moms, if there was more programs out there, because there's not a lot. If you got felonies on your record, there's not a lot of places you can go. Next Step Unlocked, they help you. Drug court, they'll help you. I mean, anything else positive in the community, it lacks a lot.
Ricky, you mentioned the social companionship and the support is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I can also tell you as someone who studies this and from a criminological perspective is that's so true. We know that persons when they get out of the system, there's a number of factors that we know could make them end up back in the system very quickly. And one of those variables that we look at is that social companionship, pro-social scale. And if that's there along with a couple of other factors, you know, your chances of going back in become just greater and greater and greater. So that's so important to have that support system in place.
Yeah, if I didn't have my mom and my dad, I mean, you know, they got good jobs. They work at Textron, my mom works at Via Christi. If I didn't have the support system, I probably would go back to the streets, you know, because that's just what we know. You know, if you don't have that, and then you have a double whammy, like let's say you get out and you don't have nowhere to go, you don't have no program to help you, and then you got some PO that doesn't care, doesn't want to see you succeed, and they'd rather just put you back in jail, your chances are slim. You're not going to make it.
And see, I think this, if we were to take a takeaway from that, would be we need to increase resources and funding at the front end for programs. And what we're doing now is we're mainly increasing funding at the back end when they go to prison, et cetera, and there's nothing there. We need to do that up front and invest up front, and then we would probably be able to resolve a lot of those issues so people don't end up in the criminal justice system.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I agree with that. Part of my story was I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I just celebrated 2 years on March 11th, and I didn't get involved into the criminal justice system until after my addiction started, and I had to feed that addiction. And I remember just being treated when I first got a case. I was hanging around people. And so there was that stereotype, and I was judged for that, and rightfully so, but I wasn't given any compassion. Nobody pulled me aside and tried to talk to me and tried to show me a different way or that there was a different way. Nobody stepped in. I remember going to my first drug evaluation and manipulating the whole system. And the lady that was doing it didn't even care. I mean, there's times that I asked for help, and I didn't know that I was asking for help, but I work in a treatment center now, and there are behaviors, there are things, if somebody wants to leave and they come to me and they say, hey, I'm gonna leave, that to me is them reaching out, that's hope. And I grab onto that, and I don't say, you know what, I'm gonna open the door and let you go. I'm gonna sit down and talk to you. I'm gonna find out, because what is really going on? Why do you feel like nobody cares? Why do you feel like your life doesn't matter? I'll tell you, what changed my direction was I had been on drug court for about 19 months and really struggled with the system, because I felt like it was set up to fail me, and so there was an instant rebellion, an instant, you're not going to help me, so, you know, kind of the whole middle finger at you, and I was angry. I was angry because of what I had heard about the system. I was angry because of what I'd seen my friends go through, and I was terrified. I was terrified that there would be nobody to fight for me. I thought I was in that fight by myself. And I remember after being on drug court for about 19 months, and I just continued to go to jail because I could not get a clean UA. And I remember they'd sent me to treatment 3 times, and I had manipulated the treatment centers to let me leave early, and there were never any consequences for that behavior. Just to go back to jail. It's just to go back to jail. And I remember when my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and I was on fentanyl at the time, and he was diagnosed with cancer, and I tried for a month to get sober. And what changed my life was one woman that had been in the program of Narcotics Anonymous AA for 19 years. I walked up to my ISO's office, and I was ready to surrender. And by God's grace, the woman that they sent out to talk to me was a woman that had been in the program and knew exactly what I needed. And she talked with me, and she gave me hope, and she made me feel like I wasn't alone, and that I'm not the lowest of the low, and that I can come back from that. That I don't have to be identified. I will always be an alcoholic and an addict, but I don't have to label myself that way, and I don't have to work so hard to be accepted or qualified as a human being, because I am human, but it's about being accepted by society, a society that says, and a criminal justice system that says that because I have done X, Y, Z, I have lost value. I have not lost value. I have lost hope. Big difference. And so to be able to get that back by somebody that had compassion, and it's not something you can teach people, but if we can set up a system for when I walk into that ISO's office and they don't see me as just another drug addict, but they have the training and the awareness of behaviors and what words mean, and they're willing to take that extra time and investigate and ask me a few questions. Are you really okay? Can I do anything to help you? Never heard those things. So yeah, I think our system, there's a lot of components to it that are made me feel like I was it's set up to fail me. My children are grown, but I deal with a lot of people that are in the system and continue to do the right thing for a number of years, and still are faced with the consequences of our criminal justice system and the way that it's set up. So anyway, that's all I got right now.
Okay, so the compassion in the actors, criminal justice actors that you dealt with, the compassion was just lacking there. Do you think that would have helped the situation?
Oh, tremendously. My first ISO was just, I went in for our first meeting and tested my alcohol. She UA'd me, my alcohol was over 5,000, my levels were over 5,000, and her immediate response was, put me in jail. And then when I called and they were decided not to revoke me and send me to prison, but that I can't deal with you. Like I can't deal with you. And that, to me, just made me feel, it compounds that feeling of I am not worth anything, that because I have done these things, and those are my behaviors. It's not who I am as a person. And even if I do those behaviors, I promise you, I choose to believe that in every one of us, whether you're in prison or out of prison, there is good. Whether or not somebody has ever identified that and allowed you to see that in yourself, that is a problem. I have to see that. I have to be given, I had to find confidence. I had to go out there and try to find a job and be told no 1,000 times before I was told yes. And by the way, the only time I ever got a job after being a felon was from people that I knew.
See, if we could switch that script just a little bit, when you went in and your levels were all over the place and you're gonna go to jail, you know, what about going to drug treatment if we had the funds in place for those types of resources at that level? And I think that's something we've seen over time that we really don't treat in that respect. We've taken money away from that part of treatment and interventions. It's not there. And I think that's part of what criminal justice reform is trying to bring light to, is that we need that there. And when we do that, when we nick the underlying problem, which in many cases is drug abuse and alcohol abuse, then we take care of the other issues that spring off of that. So, very good.
And to follow up with that, it's not just treatment. It's one of the things that really helped me in my journey has been, not only did the COVID hit, and so they didn't want to fill the prison, so my attorney suggested that I ask for an alternative sanction to move into sober living. I moved into Oxford. I was court-ordered for 2 months, and I moved for 5 months, because once I got involved into a sober community and to people that were doing the next right thing, because it was the next right thing to do, and not because I was trying to manipulate. Once I started to be around people like that, I started to change. I started to believe it for myself, that I could learn what the next right thing was, because I really did forget.
We had a panelist come in late. I'd like him just to introduce himself to the group, and if you want to tell a little bit about your story, feel free.
My name is Jarrell Weir, and I had joined the Next Step Alliance program, and I believe it was a couple years ago. And before that, I was on probation since 2012. So, yeah, it was 2021 I joined the program. So then I was on the run for like 3 years out of the last my probation. I got caught. And I went to jail, and they ended up putting me back on probation. I thought they were going to send me to prison because I was on the run for so long, but they ended up giving me a chance. And that was when the pandemic had first started too, so it was like, it was different. 905 was different when I got out. So it really wasn't too much going up there. So when I did finally go up there, my ISO, he hollered at me and asked me if I was interested to get back in school. And I couldn't wait to get back in school, because when I was locked up for that last time, I didn't know what I was going to do when I got out. Probably go back on the run, but they caught me before I did that, and I started doing the program, and the program gave me another chance for real. I mean, I never in my life thought I would be a welder, but they never gave up on me. They kept going with it, and I finally got through with the program, and everything just fell in place after that. My job, then a better job, and then now me trying to put the goodness about the program out to everybody. I mean, it was pretty good. It helped me out in ways that I didn't know who or how I was going to get things done, but 2 years later, you know, I think it's pretty good that we actually got this far.
Well, program, you mentioned Next Step Alliance, and that's a program of a few around Wichita that are just doing some wonderful work. And I wasn't aware of what they were actually doing until I heard a presentation just a month or two ago. And I'm thinking, I had no idea that, you know, you were even here. And I thought, you know, we've got to engage and get their name out more, because they're doing great work. And if we can have others step up and begin to model what they're doing, I mean, just think of the dent that we can make in people's lives and helping them out, making things a great deal better in their lives. So I think Judy is here somewhere. Yeah, they're right there, yeah. So they're doing phenomenal work, both of you at Next Step, so.
I just wanted to say this, it's pretty sad when you got, lawmakers out there making a lot of money off people's despair. People are getting rich off, prisons are big business now. I mean, we all can open up a prison today and we feel by the ball probably. But people are getting rich off our despair. And, when you come out of the system, I've been out of the system since '91. And like some of these guys, I couldn't get a job, so I had to go be self-employed. So I started a nonprofit working with youth here in the city now. Me and my wife have a program called Rise Up for Youth that's in 6 high schools, and we've mentored over 500 students. But to hear, these guys, I feel they pain because I went through everything that they're talking about. When you come out and you get treated less than, and you get everything that they ask you to do, and you still treat me like this. We go from coming out, going into a prison, into survival mode, then we come back out here, we want to get into that living mode, but we go back to surviving, because if I can't take care of my family and do those things, then like she said, you get probation officers, they tell you got 30 days to find a job. You got 6, and if you don't, you get violated. So they throwing more trauma on top of what we already going through. And believe it or not, I don't know if any of you guys did it, when you sit inside of a cage with someone else that you literally can almost touch wall to wall, and you're in there for years, prison don't rehabilitate you. Don't ever think it does. That's something you got to do on your own. You have to have the willpower and me personally, and who I call my higher power, which is God, to have that strength to say, I want something better. Not only for myself, but sometimes you got to look around and be like, man, if I can do it, you guys can do it. But it's so hard when you got people out there that are making money. It's modern day slavery. That's really what it is. When you get put in those systems, and I was working for 75 cents a day, 8 hours a day. I couldn't call in sick. I couldn't do none of those things. You had to get up and go do this job for 75 cents a day, 8 hours a day. Then you come out of the system, nobody gives you a job. Then you get a job, then you got people that come and check on you like you're a little kid. And then one little thing you do, you get violated, and you get sent back into the system. And you ask yourself, when does it stop? When is it going to stop? Because you got, people with misdemeanors, we done did all of our time. The judge gave us, all of us got sentenced by a judge some type of time. And we completed that time. And we did everything that you was asked of us to do. What more do you want from us? Besides putting us back in there. The only difference between probably us and you guys sitting out there, you just didn't get caught. Because everybody in here done something. We just happen to be the ones who got caught. So what makes you think we should get a second chance and you have all the chances in the world? I feel that we are entitled to a second chance, and this prison reform gonna go on and on for years. But is it really gonna change? Is it really gonna change when you see people getting locked up for a little or nothing now? It's hard to survive out there and live when nobody give you an apartment, nobody give you a job. You can't get, and then I'll say this and be quiet. You got people going to the prison system coming out with electrician, plumbers, welders. Then you go to an employee, they won't hire you because they see you got a felony. But I'm a skilled person. I got a certification saying I can do this job. Now you judging me just because I'm a felon. So then if we don't mark the box, now we falsifying a document. Then you fire me. So we scared to even mark the box. Because you come on the job and say, I found out you got a felony, so we got to let you go. So what do we do if we mark the box? You're not going to hire me. If I don't mark it, you're going to fire me. So it's like a catch-22. We don't know what to do. So.
And
agree, like, we have to have a piece of paper, I know I do, every time I go to the doctor. You have to have a piece of paper that states that you are on probation and you don't want any narcotics or you don't want any whatever. But you have to have that every time you go to the doctor, telling them that you're a felon. What does that have to do with my health care? It's degrading. You also have to have your, your PO, yeah, they have to call and verify your job. That's another thing. PO, or, your job don't want you to be any inconvenience to them. They want you there to work. I think more halfway houses would be good, somewhere, a place for people to go so they don't have to go back to the streets. A year-long, drug court's all about treatment. It's a long, year-long treatment. They try to change your way of thinking and how you handle grief and what's actually wrong with you so that you can, get fixed. My son died 7 months ago. He OD'd on fentanyl. I found him on my couch. I didn't go back to the streets. I was able to deal with it and move on and get it to the next step. They gave me another chance to get out of my grief. I'm still coming out of it. It's only been 7 months. But finding your son on the couch, that's hard. I just started the next step unlocked and I had to stop for about a couple months. And she was my avenue to get back into feeling good about myself, to know that I can complete something, that I'm not a failure, It's helping me get out of my depression and know that I'm actually worth something. Because you got everybody against you. You can't get a house. You gotta have it, go to the doctor every time I have to go get my thyroid medicine done. You have to have the paper signed. It's humiliating. You have to check the box on there. Yeah, I'm a felon. Then they don't want to mess with you. You can't get a house. You can't do nothing being a felon, especially with 32 felonies. And if you look at my felonies, like I said, you can't tell that they were from checks. It makes me look like I went to the store and stole all kinds of stuff because I got probably 10 theft charges and a whole bunch of forgeries because I knowingly wrote the check, and so I got a forgery for it. It's crazy. They don't take the time to understand your charges. They just look at them and, they don't care.
Yeah, I think that resonates, and especially as I was talking with Stephanie a week or two ago about your case and how it's, it was a minor felony at federal level, but still it haunts you today and continues on. And, that's part of the problem. Once persons, they mess up, they go into the system, they come out of the system, they should be clear. They shouldn't have to, not be able to vote. They should be able to go and get housing without having to check their phone. I think one of the things that comes out of this conversation so far for me is that we have to get better at going to every candidate that's running for office in this community, people that are running for state office, legislators, and we need to start asking tough questions of them of what are you going to do about this when you get to office? How do you feel about banning the box on the application form? I think we need to start asking those questions, and we need to start going to all of those debates and talks that they give, and hit them up with it.
Coke Industries, they don't have the box on their application. Coke Industries is one of the ones that my friend works for, and he's a felon himself, and a lot of felons go there. When application on there, you don't have to put you're a felon. He doesn't even have it on his application. It's a good company to work for.
Interestingly enough, Coke Industries, one of the first criminal justice reform panels that we did on campus, and this would have been 6 or 7 years ago when we were just beginning to talk about criminal justice reform. I had heard I went to a local NAACP banquet, and the guest speaker that night was, I think it was Mark Holden, who was general counsel of Coke. He got up there and he started talking about criminal justice reform and how the system is broke and we got to begin to fix it. And I'm thinking, wow, so I went up to him afterwards and we exchanged cards, and I said, would you be interested in maybe we jointly do some initial conversation on campus and invite everyone in? And he said, sure, and hooked me up with some of his people, and it was, that was 6, 7 years ago over in the Union on campus. And so they have done some significant work, and I think they kind of get a bad rap, because of the politics sometimes, but in that area, they've really done some good work.
I didn't say too much, but I don't know how qualified I am, but this is my first charge of my entire life was aggravated battery in 2018. When I COVID hit, so my court dates were moved back about a year. And in that year, I fell probably in the deepest depression I've ever fallen in my life. Existence didn't seem important to me. When I was finally sentenced and sent to corrections, I had just stopped using, and my PO asked me if I'd be interested in going back to school through Next Step. So I went ahead and did that, and it was a couple months because I heard about it in like February. I think the classes started in August. So for a couple months I kind of just sat there and sulked about it and wasn't really as excited as I should be. When I walked in day one, I was kind of a person who you just couldn't talk to, really. You couldn't tell me nothing because I didn't want to hear it. And because I knew what it was. I knew that nobody cared what I thought or had to say. Nobody really was going to listen if I told them something was going on or somebody. There was just, you feel dehumanized. You don't feel cared about, and when you're involved in the system, you walk into a room and a guy asks you to pee in a cup, and then you leave, and hopefully you're clean, because if not, you already know what's going to happen. So when I started Next Step, I was reluctant, but as time went on, it was just, it really, like the connections I made with Judy and my classmates and everything really showed me that there is a possibility to have something after. Because I went for welding, they had welding and CNC as options. I went with welding, and there was such a good sense of community between me and my classmates, and we stood behind each other when people would fall off or when somebody would relapse, we'd be there for them. I think that a lot of it just having a community and somebody to point out resources for you, somebody to stand behind you when you do mess up, because you're going to. Failure is inevitable. You're gonna fall. But I think that having somebody reach their hand out and go, I can help you up, will really, really, really help a lot of people, and it did me, because I wouldn't be in this room right now if it wasn't for real. I couldn't talk to people. I couldn't look at people in the eyes. I had no interest, and now I have something to lose, which is the best gift I ever got. But I have a lot of people to thank for that.
I just want to touch the subject of, the caring, it makes a big difference, you know. And, you know, a lot of people, like she was saying, is asking for help. You know, sometimes it can start with the PO, you know what I mean? Instead of the PO looking for a reason to send you to jail, you know, actually care and believe in you. You know, and that's what helped me pass through this last probation, is because my actor was Navarro, and he didn't judge me when he, meet me, and every time I see him, he didn't judge me, look at me, any type of way, and he felt, he knew that I was looking into getting back into wellness school, so he brought up the next step of mine, and from there it went, a whole totally different direction, but I wouldn't have made it without anyone actually caring. Like Judy, she was like her mom, you know what I'm saying? She makes sure you on time, that you got every assignment in, she wants you to be successful, and that's what we need, and not someone to be looking at us like, oh, he's just a mess up, and look for a reason to send you to jail. I remember when I was younger, man, when you go to the first meeting for corrections, that man will tell you, like 85% of y'all going to prison. That means that they're looking for a reason to send you to prison. The program is made for us to fail, period. You know, and if they give us a chance to go out here and do something right, I'm promise you, a lot of us that's in the system got some of the best hearts and some of the best people, period. You know, and they've been in situations where we're homeless and down and out, and we know how to share, we know how to care and take care of each other in a different way that there won't be the things that's going on out here. We just, you know, those that are lost with their addiction, you know, I pray that they find their way back, you know, out of it. But, you know, that's something deadly, and you're lost. You know, you just need someone to bring you back, you know, and find you, you know, and believe in you. And that is the biggest step. No lie, is believing in someone.
And I have to say, you know, even being at WSU, and taking classes there, they know why we're there. I mean, my professors, I can talk to them about my charges, and they look at me, you know, they help me. They don't care, you know, and they don't pass judgment. They treat us like we're, you know, human, and that's all we want. We want someone to help us and not judge us. And, you know, my professors are great at WSU. I mean, I hands down to them, they're giving us a second chance. And Judy, yeah, you just need someone to help you. You know, corrections lacks that. You know, they don't want to help you. They just, anything to throw you back in there, they get more money for you. But you know, Judy, this program, there's not one out there like it. I don't think, and she needs all the, you know, she probably needs all the help, you know, to make this happen and keep it going. But it's the best program out there. It actually gives people hope, a second chance. She treats you like, I mean, I remember when my son died, I called her, she talked to me for 2 hours on the phone. You know, she actually cared. You know, that's what we want. We just need someone to show us and tell us, come on, you know, it's okay. And, you know, she always is, boy, you better text her back, you know, she pushes me, you know, she pushes everybody to be great. You know, and the classes that she does, it's not just WSU, it's, you know, life skills, it's about your 401k, what you need to do, you know, your GED part, she helps with that. It's, you know, opening up a bank account, you know, me, I had bad checks and I still got a bank account, I don't know how, but I won't use it just because I'm just not, you know, but it's still open, you know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna let her down, it's right there if I need it, but I ain't using it. But, you know, it's just, you know, 401ks and having long-term and short-term goals, and it's a whole program that, you know, when you're in prison or jail, you're sitting in a cell, you don't get that, you sit there. You know, you're pretty much just wasting your life away. And mentally, when you come out, you're all kinds of lost. You don't know what to do. But like I said, there needs to be more programs, or she needs more help, you know, because she deserves it.
You know, and that goes to another point. I recently read some studies that looked at a group of offenders coming out of an incarcerated environment, and they went back 5 and 10 years. People had been in 10 years and 15 years and released. And you know, in prison itself, that's, if you're in prison for a year, it's like being 5 years on the outside, or 5 years, yeah, 5 years on the outside. You lose, you know, there's so much you lose there. And what they found is that the group that they looked at tested for PTSD, and they tested them again a year later, and they still exhibited those PTSD symptoms. So it's kind of interesting. Anyone else want to elaborate on that, or we can move on?
Something that I want to discuss is I'm hoping that legislation, you know, legislators can look at is requiring employers to hire offenders as long as, you know, the positions that they apply for, unless they're related to their charge. But all of us, I know that all of us here have some qualifications, have several qualifications to where we can be productive members of the many different employers out there. And that's one of the initiatives I would like to see in employment law.
Great idea.
So I was just going to say, we were talking about grace. So I know in my addiction and when I was doing things that got me involved in the criminal justice system, that it's a different mentality that I have to have Because see, I believe that there's nobody fighting for me, that nobody's gonna take care of me like I can. So it becomes survival, becomes willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that I am the one that walks away. And that mentality has to change. So PTSD, growing up in a home where you were abused or you saw your mother or father abused, PTSD. If I don't know that there's grace, that as a human you can have shown me grace and compassion, then I don't know what it looks like. So if I get shown those things and I just go in the belief system that I show somebody some grace, and it comes from a standpoint of a principle and not a personality, then that helps me know that no matter what I do, you're not judging me based on who I am or what I've done. That there's a system in place that works because it's the same for everybody. It doesn't matter if there was a screen and you couldn't see what I looked like or what I had done in the past. It was truly about what was going on in that moment. Then it starts to become based on principle instead of personalities. I think we get involved and we get judged for what maybe the other client did or what somebody else did before, but that's just not okay.
Also, I have one more thing. I have my Med-Aid, I have my CNA, I have my phlebotomy, and I was told when now that I'm on drug court, I can't use none of those certificates. I can't work in, a nursing home, I can't work in all of these things, but I can't be a phlebotomist, I can't do none of that till I'm off papers. And I think that, I have all these, qualifications, I have my home health aid, I'm not allowed to use them. So that's another thing why I went to Miss Judy, and being able to be a CNC operator, that's a total career change for me. I went to school, I worked in nursing, that's my whole career. And that's another thing, you have all of these, he's talked about people coming out of prison and they have welding and they have this, but they get shut down. I have all of these certificates that I've done my whole life, and to get told, at 36 years old, you can't be a Med-Aid, you can't be a phlebotomist because of your charges for writing checks. I get I did wrong, but to stop my whole career, what do you guys want me to go do? Work at McDonald's? That's not gonna provide making $10 to $12 an hour for 4 kids. Like I said, that program right there, I'll make more money, but that's totally out of my whole career, and it's intimidating. But, I have a lot of qualifications, but I'm not allowed to use them because of the Department of Corrections.
Well, that legislation does certainly set you up to fail.
Yes, absolutely does.
Okay, well, I'd like to maybe just 15 more minutes of dialogue, and then maybe the last 15 minutes open it up to anyone that might have questions in the audience. Does that sound all right? And I'd just kind of like to move just the system itself as you navigated the system, the court system. Did you understand at all stages what was going on with your cases, or do you think that you were represented properly and effectively?
That wasn't, you kind of don't know nothing when you get arrested, so you kind of learn as you go. They just throw a bunch of words at you, and it's kind of like on the spot. When it's time to get sentenced, it's time to do the thing. So, they'll ask you if you understand or not, and you can be like yes or no, and if you say no, you're just going to sit in jail longer, and if you say yes, you kind of might be doing yourself in worse, So, the way they break stuff down to you when they're trying to put the rest of the next few years of your life ready is kind of confusing sometimes, and it does get scary. A lot of people do end up taking bad deals, bad plea deals, and then end up in a worse off position than they were, opposed if they were just to sit and know what they were talking about or what's being talked about. You don't know as much as they know about what's going on with you. All you hear is the numbers and the months, and you know what I mean? If you do this now, you can get out now. If you don't, well, you're going to go to jail. So those are your options when it's time to go, and then it happens. It's just like that, you know what I mean? You go from dealing with, having hope for you people trying to get out, and then it's just, boom, 3 years, you ain't seen nobody. You better hope people are there when you get out. But other than that, no, I don't think that you do have a good understanding been in them before. Like, that's why a lot of people, and there's so many people in jails, we gotta send people from our county to other counties. And then when our people in Central County go to other counties, they're even mistreated more or worse, because you're not even from that city, or you're 3 hours away from people that you know. So, and for people like me and others, you know, you're surrounded by a whole bunch of white people that just don't like you, not from here. So then, I mean, I'm getting through a lot of stuff going in and out of jail. Like I said, I was on probation for 8 years, and half of, well, 3 of them I was on the run, but before that, it was in and out of jail. That's what made me make the decision to run, because I'm going back to jail anyway, you know, so. They make it hard for you to make those type of decisions, but then again, they make it easy, because if you're gonna lock me up anyway, I might as well just go ahead and do what I do. And I was on the run for 3 years in the case, no new cases. I just got caught. Wasn't committing no crimes out here, wasn't trying to do nobody dirty. I was just standing out the way, and they didn't care, and put right back on probation. I'm lucky I didn't go back to jail, because I sure thought that's what and then the pandemic hit. I'm lucky I got out for that. So, just the whole 8 years, I was always wondering where I was gonna end up at, and then the end of it, the program came, it changed everything. Like, I've been on probation 2 years now. I got my own credit in my own name. I got a good job. I graduated from my wife from WSU stage. That's something that I never thought would happen before, but with a lot of help and support, it's easier than what you think. And really, it's just showing up, being there, and showing that you do want a second chance, because a lot of people do want to just think this is the easy road, and the probation will be lighter on them because they are in this program, but you really got to want something for yourself. And that's what I really did want something for. Everybody else wanted something for themselves, and they got out of their situation. So with the right support system and the right programs and the right assistance, I think that it would be more people to be like us. You know what I mean? So.
Good for you, that's a great story.
You know,
Oh, well, you were speaking on our court experiences, right, and dealing with the law. I'm telling you now, like, and I'm not just, you know, saying this because I'm a young black man and that, you know, was in trouble. It's just because it is what it is. It's not innocent until proven guilty. You're guilty until proven innocent in Kansas, period.
Exactly.
They use scare tactics to get you to get pleas that you probably didn't even commit that. You know, like I was, back in 2010, I was charged with attempted, how do you get this? Attempted aggravated burglary. Now, this is the story, this is real deal. I was drunk out of my mind, I was real bad alcoholic. I'm going on 3 years now of sobriety. But it started with the police officers there, because they're the ones that give you the charge and or whatever that you gotta go to through the court system. But I'm taking my house key. It's a set of apartments. I'm just drunk, out of my mind, hallucinating. I'm trying to get into the wrong apartment with my house key, and I got attempted aggravated burglary. Now that aggravated actually hurts you a lot, you know, period. And it's like, how was it aggravated? And they said because someone was in the home. But a burglary is the intentions to enter a dwelling to commit a felony. But there was none of that. I was drunk out of my mind going to the wrong house. My dad came out, let them know that. The man didn't want to press no charges on me. He knew I was drunk out of my mind. He knew. And they did it anyway. So I still had to deal with that. And that was a long 4 to 5 years of dealing with the system that it sets you back. I got kids. My daughter is 16 in high school right now. But it took so much time out of her life of me dealing with my daughter because I had to put the Kansas first, you know, and I shouldn't even have been charged with that, you know what I'm saying? And then on this last case that I was on was a DUI, but from last time I knew, you had to be in your vehicle behind the wheel to get a DUI. I'm sitting on the man's porch. How do you get a DUI out of this? And the court system is not honest because they took that video footage of when that officer got out that car. He knows that I'm on the porch. I don't even have no keys to no vehicle. There's no keys, so how can I have a DUI? And he's telling this woman, well, just tell us he was driving so we can get him off the streets. And this man is saying that, but they edit that to give to the, you know, our court systems is not honest at all, period. And a lot of people is going through that, and it will start there. Instead of us getting judged, you know, and you know, it starts with the police. Like I said, the police officers are the ones who give you the charge. And a lot of them might have a bad day that day, you know, or they just don't like you because of your appearance, you know what I'm saying, or your music that you listen to. They profile you quick. They want to pull you over because you're banging your music. I like loud music. That doesn't mean I want to go and shoot somebody up. Come on, man. You know.
David, did you get in?
Oh, I'm just letting you finish, but when I went into the system, you know, I had 10 drug case felonies and was in 2 drug busts. But when you get court-appointed attorneys, they're gonna do the bare minimum because they're not getting paid like, you know, what they do. I don't even know. From what I heard, they have like a lottery pick. So it's your turn to get this, and this. So you might get an attorney. I was fortunate to get an attorney that really took my case seriously, really helped me. A lot of people don't get that. That doesn't happen all the time. It's very rare that you get a court-appointed attorney that really go to bat for you. And it's almost now, it's not what you know, it's who you know now. To even get a job, to even get housing, to, you know, you can have all the skills in the world, but if you don't know somebody, it doesn't matter. You know, and I was addicted to crack for 16 years, and you know, to get out and I worked at a McDonald's and I said, I have to do something different, you know, and I ended up, like I said, we started a nonprofit, me and my wife, and all, you know, we went from being in crack houses and ended up at the White House about the work that we're doing here in Wichita, and it's all because of, like they were saying, someone took time out and said, I'll give you a second chance. I'll give you a chance to better yourself. And it was a guy that's a philanthropist here in town, I'm not gonna say his name, but he invested in the work that we was voluntarily doing when they didn't get the dime. And he said, I will pay you for the work that you were doing, and he's been paying our salary ever since. And now we have a program where people are pouring into to see that we make sure our young people don't have to go through what we've been through. You ask me, that's the reform that's happening right now. It's not, the prison system is not helping that. Because they're making money off people. The reform part is people like us coming back into the community that's trying to do the right thing and saying, hey, we want to reach out and help this person, that person, this person, that person. All we need is to give us that opportunity. Just like when I go on a job, I got employees that work for me. I'll give you that chance. I'll let you hang yourself. But you can't never say I didn't give you a chance. That's all we ask. Give us an opportunity to get back out here and show you that we're not that. Drinking and drugging is what I've done. That's not who I am. That's something I've done. So you're judging me off my past. You know, like we all got felonies. I've had to pay $6 grand to get mine expunged. But everybody don't have $6,000 just sitting around. You know, but when you hold that against me for 10, 20 years of my life, and I did everything you guys asked me to do, but like I said, then you still hit me upside the head. What you expect? We're not going to just bow down. Well, I didn't. I don't think these guys did either. It comes to a point where you got to say enough is enough. Either you're going to help me, or it's sad that we cannot come out of a system that, and we can't blame, I can't blame nobody for what I done, but if I come out and want a second chance on life, at least you can give me that opportunity. Don't just keep judging me for something I've done 10, 20 years ago, and then you tell me I can't be a part of this society again? That's not right.
What I wanted to say about what David said, that you're lucky if you get a court-appointed attorney to go to bat for you, because I didn't have that, that leisure. But another thing that I would like to see, David just said it, he paid $6,000 for expungement. That is just too expensive. What I would like to see as, as reform is for expanding expungement laws, like letting the offenders get a job, have that expungement, but pay, in installments. If they're, if the lawyers won't budge, with lower costs or pro bono, then, we need to discuss about how we can get these charges or these costs paid in installments.
I'll just mention that the Wichita Bar Association, I don't know if they've done one yet this year, but I believe once or twice a year, they will do pro bono expungements, and it usually takes place on a Saturday, and you can go down and talk to one of the lawyers about your case.
That's when I found out federal cannot never be expunged. Yeah.
Okay.
Just as a testament to having people who care about you help you through these types of situations. When I started the program with Judy, I had nothing. I didn't have any experience in anything in life. When I finished, or within 2 months, like 2.5 months, I finished my GED. I finished with the certification in welding. I've been sober. I started a new job at Textron on Monday. I've had so many. I got a driver's license 2 weeks ago. I took my test. I got a driver's license for the first time ever. I'm 31 years old. So it's like I just a testament to the amount of just having somebody tell you you can do it, and finding out that just like that's all you need to have the aptitude to do it. It's just Next Step does work that I just don't. I've never seen anything like it. And it's just having that support behind you and people who are willing to care is such it's a real blessing to have and necessary for people in these situations.
Great. Okay, we are at just about 16 after now, and I'd like to maybe just kind of wrap up the next 15 minutes, and if anyone has questions for the panelists, we would feel free to ask those and we'll entertain those questions. Anything you want to ask?
I've been told the United States Post Office does not discriminate against formerly incarcerated as long as you settle all of the stuff.
Okay.
You know if that's true?
Everybody heard that?
You could be a mailman. You saying we could be a mailman as long as we're done with probation?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
I've never heard
I
of.
have a friend who was incarcerated, and he's now a supervisor at the United States Post Office.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know I haven't heard of anybody working there. Maybe if you get your stuff expunged, but I mean, I don't.
He said you just don't leave anything off when you fill out the thing. Don't leave the part off when you're riding in a car and somebody else got arrested for pot. Don't leave anything out when you make your application.
Right. Well, it's good to know.
Sometimes though, you don't want to give all that personal information out. You feel me? Like, that's not something that we do, period. We're not going to sit there and explain of how I messed up. Hey, sir, I was riding down the street drunk. And we got going. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, when we filling it out, yeah, I mean, now what I do is, I just put on there, willing to explain
Yeah.
in interview, instead of writing all of that. It's-
Yeah, because if you look at my application, if I was to put it on there, I would say I have 32 felonies for theft, forgery, with a written instrument, and willingly, knowingly forged a document. Do you think someone's gonna hire me with that? No, but if they hear my story and know that it was just 3 felonies on 10 bad checks, you know, that I'm paying back right now with restitution, I mean, if you look at that and say, this girl has 32 felonies, absolutely not. You know, they're not gonna mess with me, like, that's what I'm having a hard time with right now. You know, not being able to get a job. I haven't worked since I started all this. You know, hopefully, you know, after I graduate, on the 18th from WSU, I'll be able to, doing CNC, but not right now.
And I understand you, man, I'm not trying to say that it's wrong or nothing like that, but it's just like, you know, going in and it's better to explain to them. Because if they're looking at that paper, they're just going off of what it's saying. And just like I just explained to you, I got aggravated attempted burglary for trying to put my key in the wrong door, you know, drunk. And they're labeling me as something, so they just looking at it, when I'm just explaining aggravated attempt, that's all they're looking at. Oh man, this guy right here, he's robbing, boom. And instead of me, with me saying I will explain in the interview, I can explain to them, hey, I was mistakenly drinking and drunk, and this is what happened. I messed up. I completed my probation, and, you know.
Yeah, because my charge, it comes up there and it says theft, 500 to 25,000 on each one of my theft cases. Over a bad check to Streets Locker for $234 or 500, or writing to get into a house to get away from an abusive relationship. I wrote a bad check to the landlord to be able just to have a roof over my head and not under a bridge. Yeah, they don't, when you put on there all your charges, they don't care. The charges look way worse than what it really is. But if I mess up on probation, I go to prison for 10 years.
Yes, go ahead.
How do you keep from being afraid and angry and scared, like, you know, when you're driving a car down the street, that someone might pull you over and then you back in for, just because you.
A lot of prayer. I'm not gonna lie.
We all productive, so it's not as, you know, it's scary when you know what I mean, you got work clothes on or something, and it's midday, you headed back home. Before, it'd probably be a little harder. I think it's a little bit easier to talk to police in a casual situation when you actually being productive.
I mean,
to society.
I still get that like gut feeling as soon as I get pulled over, but I'm completely legal, you know, I never lost my license or anything, but as soon as I get pulled over, they run my name, I've got 4 cop cars still to this day, you know, behind me. And I mean, they try to come up there and they try to mess with me and all that. You know, it follows you everywhere, because they can see all your charges, but at the end of the day, I'm doing good, so they can't take that away from me.
How did you keep from, when you got out, how did you find help for finding duties? How did you find?
The probation came and they gave us another chance, and then that's when we found Judy. We ain't lost her since. She's been around.
We couldn't lose her even if we wanted to.
2 years later,
We're gonna succeed
I'm
with
right
her.
here. She's not going nowhere.
Okay, I am Juanita Ridge, and I do Justice Keepers of Kansas, so I've worked on a lot of cases for the wrongfully convicted. I have one question for you guys, and then I have a question for the audience that is here today. When we talk about the charges, the police are the arresting officers, but the charges come from the DA's office. They decide whether they charge you or not.
Right.
So this is an area we really need to focus on, is the district attorney's office. Because these charges may not even be on something that the legislator has even statute. So they're coming up with charges that may not even be in the statute.
It's still sticking with them, all right?
So, but the thing is that that's where we fight. We don't give up. We don't just lay down and let them give us them charges. We fight back. Now, the question I have now is that my organization, because I get so many calls all the time for people that need attorneys. So I want to establish a legal defense fund to help people who are in the system that need attorneys, private attorneys. Because this is where the big issue is, and we don't have anything set up like that, where we can have, people that, cause I get just a call today, they need an attorney. And they had to get rid of the public attorney,
Yeah,
the public pretender.
yeah.
And so we gotta try to help them get an attorney that's outside of Wichita. But we gotta be able to have funds, because a lot of families don't have these funds to at least put a down payment on to let the attorneys know you're serious about, their cases. So this is what I wanna try to do, and if you're interested in supporting a legal defense fund to help people that are in this system, my email is awardwinnerclass20@gmail.com. awardwinnerclass20@gmail.com. And David and I both sit on a panel for the Wichita Police Department, where we're part of the panel that meets with new recruits. And we give them an eye view of what's really going on in our communities, so that they will learn to have compassion when they're just getting started. And then we have a community cleanup challenge where the police officers come into the neighborhoods where they're gonna be working and help clean it up and get to meet the neighbors and everything. So this will be my 4th year doing the community cleanup challenge. But I've been a soldier in the community for a long time. And Mr. Birzer knows me, everybody knows.
Can you repeat your email address again?
It's award winner, AWARD, awardwinnerclass20@gmail.com.
I mean, I can agree, we are, guilty until proven innocent. Once you go behind those walls and you're in handcuffs, it is a fight. And if you do not, those public defenders, they don't care.
Right.
They're not
I
gonna do the
make it
footwork.
here.
Yeah, they don't do the footwork, they just want you to sign the paper and sign your life away.
Yeah.
That's all it is to it. So what you're doing is, it's good. That's what people need, is people to fight for, because there's a lot of people in there that are innocent,
Yeah.
that deserve to be out, but they just didn't have the good attorney or someone to fight for them, to make them heard. Because once you're behind there, you're treated like crap.
See, and I have a lady that called from the jail. Her attorney hasn't been to see her in a year. She's been in there 3 years.
Especially, yeah.
I've given him a week to get a hold of her. If he don't, we're gonna come after him. I have a whole army of people that will flood his office until he take care of business. We don't play. We don't play.
When you're in jail, you don't see your attorney till 5 minutes prior to till you're going to the court.
Oh, I know.
You don't know what they're talking about, you don't know nothing until you're right there and you're going up and he's like, hey, this is what's going on, you need to sign this, you need to do that, and it's rushed.
It's
You don't have-
pressure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have an option.
That's
If you want out of jail, you better
pressure.
sign this paper, or if you want, if you wanna fight it, you stay in jail for years,
Yeah.
trying to fight your case. Ain't no speedy trial,
Right.
so what you're doing is good.
Probably have time for one more question. Over here.
I was just gonna ask, actually it was about the speedy trial, so I've heard that because of COVID, right to a speedy trial has been, paused or
Delayed.
pushed back.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, I don't know how many of you were in the system when COVID was happening, but I'm curious if that right to a speedy trial, kind of pause impacted you at all? Or
I think COVID affected everybody in jail.
okay.
Everybody in jail that was supposed to get out, or supposed to go back to the prisons, or supposed to come back for a court date, all that got delayed. All that, I still talk to people in jail right now, and they're same cell, and they're not even supposed to be in the county. They're supposed to be upstate or in the Fed somewhere, and they're still sitting in Cedar County. Meanwhile, there's still people getting arrested for. I don't
Jail
think
is overcrowded
they should
because
be
of
getting arrested, or at least put in jail for it, and then there's not no room for them, and COVID messed everything up. On the outside, it was good for me for probation. I didn't have to see my PO at all, but on the inside, man, I had bonded out right before. I had money when I went to jail, but I was gonna use that money for prison because I was like, there's no way they'll let me back out. And then the bond was set, and then I got out right before COVID. So I feel for everybody. And then they gave
COVID was hitting. I was in there for 4 months when it first started. It was horrible. We were overcrowded, and we were all put into a room, we all slept on the floor, there was 30 people in a gym, that we were triple bunked, there was 2 people supposed to be in each cell, there was actually 4 people. It was crazy, it was a madhouse. And then I got out for 4 months, went back for 4 months, and it was even worse. It was horrible. Everybody was locked down, and then there were, shortages because the deputies didn't want to come or they were sick. There was one time we didn't get to eat for halfway through the day because the cooks were sick. They had to bring in sandwiches. I mean, it was horrible through COVID. Yes, Central County. I even had my mom call Kate News because it was just inhumane. I mean, you had people laying everywhere and they wouldn't let nobody out. They weren't getting people the help that they needed.
No fresh air.
No fresh air.
Yeah.
Well, you don't get that no matter what,
You're
but.
never gonna see the sun in Central County. Unless you're looking out the window, you'll never feel.
And that's a big problem with the depression that goes on inside the jail is because, people are not getting any fresh air. If they could just get some fresh air, that would help out a lot.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna let this gentleman ask a question, he's had his hand up. One last question.
I'm gonna make this real quick, and I'm gonna say this to all of you up there. 3 things I want to say. Number one, you need, first of all, I'll ask a question. Why do you think so many poor people and minorities are in the jail? Part of it is because you don't know your rights. Nobody talks about that. That's the first thing you need to do, spend some time learning your rights. That's the first thing. Number 2, when we talk about prison reform, people go into prison, they come out, they're the same when they come out as they were when they went in.
Absolutely.
The prison system should have some kind of a training, and when you're in there, you should be able to learn some kind of training. And when you get out of prison, you have some skills that you can take to an employer, and even though you have a band of box, you have some skills that you can take to an employer. Okay, that's number 2. Now, number 3, I want to tell you one thing. I heard you say that you've been unemployed for a period of time, but yet you frown on the McDonald's job. Do you have any idea what a manager of a McDonald's makes?
Not right now.
$35,000, $45,000, $50,000 a year. Would that help you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You mentioned, when you said about training and different things like that, there are people coming out of the prisons with skills, electricians, plumbers, welders, but when they do go to an employer, they won't hire them just because of their background. So they got jobs in prison now where you get skills, but when you come out, I got a certificate saying that I can do this job, but you won't give it to me just because I'm a felon. But I'm certified to be a plumber, electrician, welder, but you won't give it to me, all because of my background. And that's what I was talking about. What good is it for us to go into these prisons and get all these certifications? Because we think that if I get this and this, when I do come out, somebody's going to give me a job. And I'm an electrician, but nobody's going to give me a job. I'm a plumber. Who's going to hire me? Then I got to do those side jobs to make the ends meet. And that's probably with friends and family. Then they might tell somebody, hey, I know a guy that can, he's got a certificate, he's good. But when I go to one of these companies, they don't want to mess with us because they look at our felons. Now, some companies will hire felons because you get a tax break. But at the same time, they still frown up on it because of your background. So we are coming out of those systems with skills. They just don't hire us. They just don't give us those opportunities to get those jobs.
Isn't the band of box a state law?
Not, it's up to companies. All companies don't have to have band of box. It's not a state law yet, because there's a lot of companies still won't hire you. And there's some companies like Walmart, Coke, different places like that where you don't have to mark the box anymore. But there's a lot of companies, because people are nosy by nature. So they want to leave it on there just to see what you've done. And I'm just like, I'll put on my application, when I was putting in application, I will explain up on the interview. So I can at least make it to an interview.
Yeah, right.
But you know how many times we never had an interview?
Right.
A lot. Then we get put back in the system because we ain't got a job. Well, how can I get a job if you don't give me an interview? Then they lock us right back up.
Okay, I think we need to really close it down because we are past our 7:30 mark. So first of all, hopefully you've learned something. I've certainly learned something. This has been a lot of learning that's taking place this evening. And I want to give our panel a hand. Join me. I would just like to thank you for coming to the panel, and I'm going to let Julie close it out.